Our game is almost finished and now we just need to make some finishing touches. And one of the main things we're going to do in this video is to make sure that the user can only click on one of these selection buttons once per image. So currently if we start the game, we can click on any of these buttons as many times as we want for every single image. We also want to make sure that this score section and the buttons is not available before the game even starts. So first of all, we'll begin by hiding this stats section over in our script.js. I'm going to do this just below our variables, so under the total available. Let's grab our stats content section, which is the wrapper just here, which holds all of our scores and buttons. So document.getElementById. The ID name is stats content. We can then hide this by setting the star property of visibility to be equal to hidden. Since this is now gone, we want to reinstate this once the game starts. So let's copy this. And if we go down to our play function, we can add this inside of here. But this time we want the visibility to be equal to visible. Then finally at the end of the game, we'll also manipulate this. So we can add this in. And once again, setting this to be hidden once the game is over. So let's save this and try this in the browser. Click on play. And now our stats are now showing. Let it cycle through to the end of the game. And this is now being hidden, ready for the start of the game. Next, we can also make these two values dynamic. Currently, we don't have a value to begin for our score. And we have this hard-coded value of 20 inside of our index.html. So let's remove this. And now we can update these with the ID of current score and also total available. We already have these values. If we scroll up to our variables at the top, we have our score and also the total available. So let's add this in now. So we'll grab the element by our ID, which is the current score. And then set the inner HTML to be equal to our score variable. I'm going to duplicate this. And the next one of total had the ID of total available. The variable is stored just above, and that's this one here. So let's pull this over. Over to the browser, we can now test this out if we click on play. Our values are now updated, and we still see the dynamic number of images of 20. If you remember from early on in the HTML, we also set this section just here, where we say how many seconds the user has to decide. This is just a hard-coded value of 3, which is over in our index page. We also surrounded this value inside of a span with the ID of time setting. So now let's remove this hard-coded value. We can now set this as a variable. So at the top, I'm going to create a constant, the name of time delay, which I'm going to initially set to a value of 3 seconds. We can now use this time delay in 2 places. First of all, we're going to update our DOM just here, and we can also use this down below inside of our timer function. So we can replace our hard-coded value with our variable. We can then update the DOM. So let's duplicate this line, and the ID which we want to target is time setting. Okay, let's give this a save and check this is working. So it is working, but it doesn't look exactly how we want it to. This is a value of 3000 since this is in milliseconds. So all we need to do is to divide this by 1000, giving us the value of 3 seconds. Let's also check the timer is working and see we have 3 seconds between each image. Okay, that looks fine. The next thing we need to fix is the fact that the user can click on these buttons multiple times for each image. So the way we're going to fix this is by creating a variable called chosen, and we'll set this to be true once the user clicks on the button. So let's add a comma just after this, and then we can add a new variable called chosen. And we'll set this to an initial value of false. Now if we scroll down to the functions which are enabled once the user clicks on the buttons, This is the match and no match functions. So we only want to run the code inside of here if the chosen value is equal to false. So cut this and we can create an if statement, and we can say if not chosen. We can then add our curly braces and run the code inside. We'll do exactly the same for our no match function just below. So cut this out, create our if statement, and then run this code inside. So initially, both of these functions will run if we click on a button because we've set our chosen value to be false. So either of these options will work at the very beginning, but once the user has clicked on one of these, we want to then reverse this and set our chosen value to be equal to true. We'll do exactly the same in our no match function. So once the user has made any selection, chosen will be equal to true. So then we want to make this false again so the user can make a new option. And the way we can do this is back up in our generate function. Let's set chosen to be equal to false. So the value of chosen will only ever be equal to false once the game starts, or once we generate a new image. This means the user can then make their choice, because this will be false, and then we'll set this to be true so no further choices can be made. Give this file a save, and let's test this over in the browser. So we can now only click on any of these buttons once for that image, once for this image, and this is all working fine. So this is now all the functionality now taken care of for our number match game. And next we're going to finish off this project by adding a fade effect to our image.